Well, hello. Welcome to another ImagineFX video tutorial. This time on shadows, cast shadows, and how to approach them in the modern world. I'm Tom Foster, a comic book artist for 2000 AD and the Judge Dredd magazine. And I'm not alone today. Building on the success of the last commentary, where I invited others into the studio here with me, I've brought a special guest along to discuss this with me. It's sometimes nice to bounce ideas off somebody. It's my brother, Cameron Foster.
Hi there, how you doing? I didn't realise it wasn't the first.
No, you've been supplanted in that role by a couple of, well, Zan and
fair enough.
My friend Ewan, who did commentary on a running tutorial that I did.
Oh, I remember that. That was good.
Oh, do you?
I remember the drawing.
Oh, right, okay. Yeah. Yeah, so Cami is not a complete layman in the art world. He has done a fair amount of professional graphic design work. He also has a degree in art history.
More or less,
I believe. What specifically?
It was humanities and art history.
Humanities and art history.
Yeah. Kept it broad. I did the year philosophy as well.
How do you? Is that not anthropology? What's humanities exactly?
I suppose it's like cultural history,
right? Okay,
basically. So that was kind of the thing, and then I focused in on art history. So.
Okay, you'd think being my brother, I would know all of these things already. I would have at some point asked.
Yeah.
But that's fine. I bet he doesn't know the full title of my degree.
Drawing, wasn't it?
Yes, that's it. Yeah. Being good at drawing.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So we're starting off in DAZ 3D here. It's a piece of 3D posing software that is free to download usually, and it comes with a lot of stuff as defaults, some models and everything you can use. You can buy more. Most of the stuff that I'm using in this tutorial does come with it as standard, but there are a couple of things which I've purchased, which are sort of in my little library of purchased assets, which I'll maybe explain as we go along. But because this scene has a very kind of specific set of shadows that I wanted to cast in, and I didn't have a prison cell set already in my library, I decided to mock one up, which is not actually that time consuming to do. DAZ isn't really a modelling tool, but given that this is just for the purpose of sort of creating a very basic kind of geometry in a scene with some shadows in it, you don't have to rig up a particularly complex model. All I've done is I'm using what are called primitives in DAZ. Just go to create new primitive, and you can create cylinders and cubes and everything. And the cylinders, I've set them all to the same dimensions, and just used the little movements of sliders along the side to make them precisely the same distance apart each. Sort of implied a similar principle to the way that I'm using. I mean, if you're watching this reasonably kind of closely and you've any familiarity at all with DAZ, then you'll be able to tell quite easily what I'm doing. As also helped by the fact that this is probably the first ImagineFX tutorial I've done where the events are taking place in something resembling real time. This was a very straightforward one to do, so the actual process of doing it, I mean, the video is only sped up maybe 1.5 to 2 times the speed that it was.
I thought you were quick. I was like, man, he's good at this.
Flying
about.
Yeah. Normally they're sped up by a factor of about 6 or 8, or sometimes even 16. But this one's considerably more like, and you'll notice the video quality is a little bit better as well. I kind of improved my export settings a little bit, so you can actually see the kind of numbers and options I'm selecting. So hopefully this will be kind of some use, but it's incumbent upon us as your guides through this experience to to make the process a little bit more engaging as a viewing experience, rather than just you sitting here silently watching somebody work. Because I've tried doing that with online tutorials before, where there's no commentary, and even if the commentary wouldn't necessarily have been that related to what they were doing, it's surprisingly difficult to kind of keep your attention levels up.
Yeah.
When you're watching just silent.
Oh man, yeah. I don't have speakers at my PC at work, and if I'm trying to watch a short tutorial to do an effect on thing, and I can't focus on it at all. So yeah, it's good to.
So there you go. A recommendation within
the
video for the way in which we're doing the video. Yeah.
We can maybe put that in the poster for the video.
Yes, yeah, I think it was snappily enough worded, wasn't it?
So.
So what? I haven't done the poster yet for this one. It's coming up close to new billboard season as well, so I need to work on that. So what? So as somebody who doesn't really use this kind of software, but works in a visual medium. What do you think about using 3D software for visuals? Is it something that interests you? Is it something that you would consider doing?
The stuff I tend to do tends to be quite flat.
Okay.
There's a lot of text involved. It's more that kind of thing. So
yes, I love it. Cammy's graphic design is posters.
Yeah, so event stuff and things.
Did I say your name, by the way, when I introduced you? Did I just say my brother?
I mean, that's fine. That's how most people know me.
Right.
That's Don Foster's brother. My God.
Cameron Foster.
Yeah, I think you did.
I call him Cammy. You may remember him from the questions section on my previous videos, in which he appears in spirit. That sync, by the way, is not a mocked up primitive model. That's something that I downloaded.
That's not standard prison issue either.
No, it's not. I couldn't find a standard prison issue sync without purchasing a whole cell. So, but this only makes a kind of fleeting, glimpsing appearance in the image. It's just sort of peeking out from the shadows. So I thought I'd get away with it.
Yeah, right. I suppose.
Yeah, I originally wanted a toilet because I'm that kind of person.
Yeah, sure.
But I didn't have one in my. I think I maybe had one, but it was too modernist and kind of like that would feel like a very sophisticated prison.
One of those kind of prisons that the Daily Mail get all their knickers in a twist about these cushy prisoners.
Yeah, but they don't have a problem if somebody who works in a senior position for them ends up getting sent to one for or something. Yeah. I mean, I know that was news of the world, but same shower. Yeah. So
going back to what you were saying about the applications for this, what I can see straight away and what I'm interested to see what you'll be doing with it is the ability to position lighting.
Yes, well, that's key to this. That's one of the reasons why. I mean, this is a very good example of the usefulness of software like this. You would think when you were doing a shadow effect like this, because as a presumably reader of the magazine and not just somebody who's downloaded this illegally, I know those people exist.
No,
can you believe it?
Scoundrels.
Yeah. That you presumably you have already seen the image. Cammy has not seen the image yet. We're sort of keeping that in like a kind of reveal at the end.
I can't wait. It's gonna be it's like changing rooms.
Yeah, it's exactly like changing rooms. Yeah. Because Cammy's going to have to live in that.
I hope I don't cry
for the next 15 years.
I know how much you like Lawrence Llewellyn-Bowen, so I'm nervous.
I think he gets a bad rap, actually. Sincerely, I genuinely thought he was all right.
Sorry.
Yeah, that program he had on his own, where he did a sort of changing rooms, but it was a bit more kind of like, I think he had a slightly bigger budget for the stuff, and he got to actually really consult with the people on what they wanted, rather than just surprising them with something awful.
And he knew the difference between a Louis XIV and a Louis XV chair, so I was like, well, better than. Oh, she's all right.
I didn't know Louis XV designed chairs.
Is she okay?
Well, she's lying down. This is one of the this is what's called the Genesis model. The Genesis.
It does look like Phil Collins.
Yeah, the Genesis male and female figures come again as standard with DAS, as well as 0% APR, and they have. They're very good. I think it's the Genesis 3 model now. I actually use the Genesis 2 because most of the pose presets I own are compatible with the Genesis 2. But they're very good. They cover pretty much every need. You can buy morphs for them, turn them into any kind of body type. This I just use the default. But yeah, they're great. They pose really well. The anatomy sort of
that's good,
autocorrects once you pose it a little bit. I mean, it's not perfect, but it's a great starting point.
Yeah. I mean, you're going to obviously work on that, is it?
Yeah, although in this image, I mean, as I say in the sort of body text of the article, I didn't actually have to do that much drawing on this one because with a combination of DAS and Photoshop, because so much of it is just like sort of high contrasts, shadows and light. There was a lot of the image was just pretty much done. I mean, if I were doing this for a comic, an actual comic rather than recording it, I would ink it traditionally with ink and paper, but I wouldn't be so easily able to record that process. So I tend to do everything digitally for these tutorials.
Okay.
But yeah, so apart from the sync, everything I'm using currently just comes with DAS. You don't have to purchase it. I do use some textured walls and things which were part of a sort of a set that I downloaded. But even those could have been mocked up with just primitives, but it just gave me a little bit extra texture. These pillows are another one that were ordered. They're part of a bedroom set or something that I've got. But yeah, everything's achievable really with pretty limited resources.
How much does a set of pretend pillows cost you?
To be honest, I can't remember. I think that maybe the bedroom scene, like, it depends. There's often like promotional offers and stuff on with DAS, so you can often get stuff for like
buy the pillowcases, get the duvet for free.
Yeah. No, just that you can buy certain assets like the whole scene for $1.99 instead. That's dollars, so in pounds it's usually
about $1.99.
Yeah, about $1.99 these days. But sometimes it depends. Like some sets are like $30-$40, but they're usually really complex, like whole sort of cities and stuff.
Right. Okay.
I mean, it's very like I can invest a bit more into the stuff because I get it's my job. I get paid for making the visuals, so it's a worthwhile investment for me. But this is a good example of something you can do quite easily. And to be honest, I'm thinking of using kind of slightly more primitive stuff more often, because I find that when you use very detailed background models and it comes to actually kind of doing the proper inking over the top of it, it can be very time consuming, because I ink pretty much everything traditionally just so that I have a finished page of art, like a piece that I can sell or whatever at the end of it. And inking over some of the backgrounds that I've used has just been incredibly time consuming. But yeah, this one would probably have been fairly straightforward. So yeah, at the moment, it like I say, if you've got any experience with DAS, this is all pretty straightforward. I'm not doing anything particularly complicated.
How do you ensure there's like a sense of weight? Because I think, is that just good positioning, or is that...
Partly, yeah. You've got to sort of understand posing to a certain extent, understand the way that the body has to kind of be positioned to be balanced correctly. Yeah. I mean, this looks a little this looks a little artificial at the moment.
Well, yeah, but I mean, there's just the basic elements, isn't there?
Yeah, and to be honest, the 3D model, the unadorned kind of default Genesis model will often look a little bit stiff in poses, even if you pose it pretty much perfectly. I mean, usually you get something that's quite convincing, but there's always something that you have to kind of tweak at the drawing stage, and that's where.
Is that kind of what you're doing there with like having the elbows sink in a little bit, and, or was that just a mistake that I've highlighted in front of the
is the elbow sinking in?
It was for about 2 seconds.
Oh, I think that's just because I'm creating a sort of trying to create the look of a mattress and a sort of bed bit. Yeah. So I was just moving it about to get the right height. That move tool is unfortunately positioned there. Sorry about that. Currently, if you've just joined us, this must be not so
glad you brought me down for this one, dude. This is oh my goodness.
Well, you did say you wanted something to do with women in prison.
yeah, it's a favourite genre.
Yes,
yeah.
It's a theme you like to explore often in your posters and private etchings.
You don't often get films with so many female characters that have conversations with each other that don't involve men. So it's it's one of those kind of some would say they were exploitation films. For me, they're pro-feminist works, I think.
Right, I see. Cameron sort of obliquely citing the Bechdel test there.
Yeah, that's exactly
showing off his feminist credentials.
Yeah. And there's sometimes shower scenes as well, so that's pretty wicked.
Yeah, yeah. Right. So again, just using. I mean, these. I can't remember if this actually came with Daz or not. These are just some very kind of generic clothes I'm putting on at the moment. It's more just about getting something that's kind of that's the right sort of weight. I'm getting rid of the
stripes on there.
Yeah, well, I mean, I know prison clothing sort of.
Well, I was wondering if you were going with that.
No.
Let's go arrows.
No, yeah, no.
Traditional.
Her ankle's also going to be chained to a big circular weight.
That's a good idea. I like that. Maybe you could have Droopy chasing her around.
Yeah, but yeah, it's fairly easy to just. I generally turn off the what's it called, the thing we map, the UV map on the models, just because it tends to just, unless it's exactly what I want, it makes it easy. I mean, like in this instance, having it just white like that makes it far easier to see the sort of folds and creases and everything. Given that it's going to be a black and white piece, I'm trying to keep everything as kind of clear and distinct as possible. I mean, this is. The illusion here is that this is going to be sort of prison, not scrubs, that's medical. Fatigues, yes, thank you. I knew it was worthwhile having another person around.
Right, I'm off.
Yep. So I think these, simulate the kind of the slight looseness of prison fatigues well enough that they're convincing. I mean, they're not perfect.
They look like silk jammies. This is the cushiest prison. That's 2 pillows as well, I noticed.
Yeah, I mean, and they're nice pillows.
Yeah, is that a fringe?
It might be a valance.
Oh.
I'm not sure.
About your knowledge of soft furnishings.
No. I think a valance is not on a. Yeah, it's probably a fringe. Valance is as Alan Partridge put it, the skirt bit round the side of the bed. The hair is as a purchased asset as well, I think, possibly.
So you've got all these, and then there's a lion's mane in there.
The lion's mane is for a lion model. I mean,
that makes
sense. Have their own hair.
Yeah. So hair.
Yeah. This chain came as part of a set, I think. Chains are actually surprisingly difficult to find on their own in the Daz library. This one's the only one I had that has hooks on there. The other chain I've got is it's just an object file from another site.
What's the chain for?
The chain, it's going to be one of those old timey prison beds that chain up to the wall.
Oh, that's nice.
I
like that.
Well,
yeah.
I'm playing in cliches here painting in cliches because because we're going to see so little of this scene that's not in shadow.
Yeah.
That I wanted it to be super clear. It was a prison cell. The shadow of bars falling across a figure in bed wasn't enough for me.
Yeah. Okay.
So yeah, I just wanted it to be absolutely as clear as possible. This is a prison, maybe not a 21st or even 20th century prison, but a prison nonetheless. Yeah. So it's.
Are you leaving space for Ronnie Barker above though, by doing that?
Yeah. I actually did consider putting a second bunk in because like. Surely those fold-up beds. I mean, you've got to have at least two in a cell, or it seems kind of.
There's no point.
There's no point in having a fold-up one, but it would have kind of obscured the view of the figure. So I mean, it might have worked better. But to be honest, But by the time I thought of that, I was already kind of at the rendering stage, and I'd worked out my lighting and camera angles and everything. So, it was. I mean, I hope having this at almost real time isn't an incredibly boring viewing experience for you. But I wanted to have at least one of these tutorials where you could actually follow what I was doing in some detail if you were sort of relatively new to the software and stuff. So this, I mean, like you really don't lose anything by having it sped up that tiny bit, other than sort of the time my brain takes to go, what should I do now?
Humming and hawing.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And so, in lieu of actually editing these videos in a way that would make them a more enjoyable viewing experience, just speeding it up a little bit seems to do the job.
Yeah, it's either that or explosions, really.
Well, I do have a futuristic ray gun in the other tutorial I've done.
I know, I vetoed that.
I gave you the choice of which you prefer.
I preferred women in prison.
Yeah.
It was actually, it was the shadows.
I know. You had some questions about shadows. I believe.
did.
Now might be a good time.
Do you want?
Well, just give me something, because I mean, like we've winged it for this.
Yeah, we're quite far. Yeah.
You haven't consulted your notes.
No,
once.
not at all, and they are lengthy.
He has made notes.
Yeah. So, I suppose one of my first questions is, when you're getting yourself into the kind of headspace for this kind of thing.
Yes.
Are you?
My chanting and scented candles.
Yeah, when you've got can you put those out actually, because they're.
Yeah, sorry about that. I'll get the boys out as well. Some boys came in to wash us, but sorry, I'd nicked that joke from another commentary. Yeah, nicked that joke from Alan Partridge commentary. That's twice I've mentioned that already. Anyway, sorry. Yeah.
So you're getting yourself into the headspace.
Yes.
Right.
Chanting my mantra.
Yeah. Are you going Hank Marvin, or are you going DJ Shadow?
I don't understand. Oh, I see. Right. Yep. Okay. Sorry. Took me a second. See, there's no answer to that, really.
Organ donor or Apache?
Building steam with a grain of salt, or one of their other many hits.
We should stick with comics, shouldn't we?
Yeah. Although I am pleased that I managed to get a DJ Shadow reference rather than a Hank Marvin.
Shadows, right?
I think that's.
We're just reeling off the Cliff Richard hits then.
Yeah. Oh, that one that he did for the Thunderbirds movie. Do you remember that?
Oh yeah, and they had a puppet of him, didn't they?
Yeah. It was Cliff Richard Jr. Probably the most unrealistic prediction made by that
as
show.
As close as we'll ever get,
But I believe it was him playing with presumably the Shadows.
Oh right, I see.
Oh, I see. Yeah, the Shadows. But yeah, a shooting star will shoot you and Mars will go to war. The man on the moon will jump on you if you don't love me anymore.
I tell you
it's a very threatening song.
You know a lot about puppet songs.
I do. I could pretty much sing the whole Muppet album word for word. Yes.
Oh, look at that! Right, we're right in there now.
Now we have the cell. This is our room that.
It's kind of Wild Westy, isn't it?
It's actually it's like a sort of creepy medical facility.
Yeah. You can see it more
it's
now.
called West Park. It's
Wild West Park.
No, that's Westworld. You're thinking.
Yeah.
It's just it's one of the fairly basic kind of early DAS environments, and I already had it in my library because I used it for Storm Warning, the series I did for 2000 AD, which is available in the trade paperback Brit Sit Noir from Amazon and the 2000 AD website.
Well.
Good.
Yeah,
Thanks.
that was good information.
Yeah.
Do you want to say it again in case people missed it?
No, you tell. Oh, they can rewind.
Ah, cool.
I assume they'll be watching this a few times.
Yeah, absolutely.
Getting some friends around. But the prison cell environment is it's a from this sort of medical facility model, which I think if you're a member of the Daz Platinum Club, you can get pretty much all the West Park models for $1.99 each. But if you don't want to spend money, you can just use the primitive shapes. Really, I only did this to give me some kind of texture and see, because I'm not inking it traditionally. I'm having to do as much of it kind of in render as possible. So I wanted to have a little bit of background texture there, because I don't have a recourse to brushes and pens and stuff. But yeah, I'm just moving the walls around so that I can kind of have the shot be kind of quite tight and not any kind of excess negative space in it and everything, but at the same time be able to fit the camera in there as well, because with a lot of instances you can just make the camera you can put the camera, you can get rid of the wall that's in the way of the camera and just make that invisible. But of course we want it to be casting shadows. And I mean, you can set it in the render so that, you can have it so that it's visible in the viewer, or not visible in the viewer, but it's visible in the render and everything. But if it's visible in the render, it's going to be in the way of the camera. If it's visible in the viewer, it's also going to be in the way of the camera. You can set it to just cast shadows, but to be honest, I couldn't be bothered, so I thought I'd approach it like an actual film director would if he was shooting this scene, and just use a different lens size.
So how important is that to kind of have your viewpoint make sense in the sort of physical space you're trying to create?
Well, to some extent, you want it to be sort of reasonably naturalistic. Like, I mean, comics have their dramatic angles and everything, but the language of film is usually a good sort of a good starting point, you know, and you can always make the shot a little bit more wild and dynamic if you like.
Sure.
But this is not a wild and dynamic scene. This is a fairly kind of ordinary scene, I guess. And I mean, in software like this, you do have the freedom to put the camera wherever you like, but it's usually good to try and find. I mean, it's more about composition, to be honest. Like with a shot like this, it's about getting everything in shot. Yeah. So that the shadows fall nicely, and the figures in, and the sync is in shot and everything as much as you want it to be. So it's more just a case of trying to create a composition that gets all the sort of storytelling elements in play. Let's say the character's face. So you get like a sense of that, of what they might be thinking, even if they don't have a particularly sort of expressive look on their face. The shot will tell you what they're thinking, but it's nice to have their face in shot, just to kind of make you empathise.
We're onto lighting now.
Oh, we are into lighting. Yep, well spotted. I'm using a spotlight again, default with Daz. And I'm using with Daz, one of the really great tricks that I only sort of discovered recently is that you can look through your spotlight as if it were a camera.
Okay.
So you can see exactly where the light's going to fall.
That's good.
You know that everything that you can see through the bars there is going to be lit because you are the light source. So everything you can see, the light can see.
I am the light.
You are the light in this particular instance, yes.
Wow.
So I'm switching between cameras here. There's the camera that I'm using for my actual shot. I'm doing a quick render now, and you'll be able to see that I'm sort of getting there, but the shadows are already falling across the face, which I don't want. But you can see how the shadows are already making it kind of a more compelling visual. But here again, just gone back to the spotlight so that I can see the whole face through the bars there, so I'm moving the camera just a little bit so that I can get more of the more room above the, because I wanted to have there to be quite a bit of cell wall above the figure, so that we get, as well as getting all of the light from the cell door. I also wanted to sort of create a sense of space above the figure, so that you could infer from it that they are thinking.
Yeah.
It's difficult to describe why that works as composition. Why having more space above the figure means that you sort of get the impression that you're kind of, well, that their thoughts are kind of, they're thinking about their environment.
Yeah,
you know.
I suppose they're looking into that space.
Well, that's true.
And you can tell that there's nothing else in that space other than their thoughts. If you know what I mean.
Yes.
You can read that as in a kind of quite straightforward way. Do you need to consider text as well? You know, where
Oh yes, normally you would. I mean, I don't know if there would be any. I mean, this panel might be completely devoid of speech balloons and thought bubbles and everything.
Because a wee thought bubble with like "I'm in the jail."
Yeah.
In this one would really kind of tie the whole thing together.
Yeah, that's true. They do say that you know, in comic book storytelling, you have to tell as much of the story with pictures as possible. But I think that caption would really help.
Yeah, yeah.
There's not. I mean, the thing with text, the speech bubbles and captions and everything is that you can, even if there is text in a scene, you should obviously take that into account with the composition and leave enough room for it. The sort of conventional wisdom is that you leave about a quarter or a third of the panel, usually the top quarter or third, with no essential information in it, where you could put text.
Yeah.
Obviously, it depends on how much there is in the script. If there's lots of text, you leave more room, etc. But in some instances, even when there isn't text, because every other shot is set up to take that into account, so everything's naturally kind of justified a little bit lower in the image, you're used to kind of comic panels looking that way. And besides, you know, rules of thirds and all that, having everything right bang in the middle of the panel doesn't seem like very attractive or sophisticated storytelling or design, you know. So it's good to kind of break things up and have a nice bit of space in there for your images to breathe. This is, I think, looking a lot more like it. Yeah, I think this is the one I end up going on to use. I've moved the hand as well so that it's in the light, but I really like the way the shadows have fallen here. You would think that using 3D software might actually inhibit your ability. Like it would allow you to achieve convincing shadows, but you know, it might not always give you the kind of expressiveness you want in the shadows. You'd think that maybe if just sitting down and drawing stuff might allow you a bit more freedom. But you would be surprised how much you can achieve your kind of original artistic vision. Like, for example, if I want those shadows to fan out more or less, I can just move the light source closer to or further from the bars of the cell. You know, I can move the light up and down or whatever. There's very little that I can't achieve, and even if there is some,
he says.
Well, sorry, yes, with 3D posing software. But even if there is something, then I can always just do it at the drawing stage.
Yeah.
Having this even just as a reference, is
no, you can see immediately, and like I mean, obviously this is what it's for, but the way that the shadows play across the body and things like that, it you know, it must be really useful to be able to not have to kind of experiment with that.
Yes, that's true. I mean, it's not always the hardest thing to map. I mean, typically you just try and think of it as if the person's clothing and bedding and, you know, walls and everything were striped. You know, that's how you just kind of plot the contours across the figure that way, rather than trying to outthink the way that the light plays across them and everything. Because it's essentially the same principle as if those lines were kind of painted on them. But this just is, you know, an enormous time saver in this instance, and also you're right that you don't have to go through that process of actually sitting and kind of physically drawing everything from scratch and you know, and trying to figure out why one little shadow looks wrong or whatever.
Do you know what it reminds me of?
What?
The jail cell from the front cover of James Brown's In the Jungle Groove. Have you seen
That's
that?
a deep cut. I'm not familiar with that.
It's yeah, you should. You want to get on that. It's,
Okay.
Yeah, it's a good. But yeah, it's pretty much the same. So it's authentic.
Yeah, I've been unconsciously influenced by the work of James Brown.
Yeah.
Or by the work of, I don't know who did that album cover. Not Hypnosis or somebody. Just somebody who
Some
designed
guy
that.
who was also in the jail but happened to have a camera with him,
Yes.
I think.
And now we're in Photoshop. I've applied the stamp filter here. Just played around with the black to white ratio. Also, I may have I think I mentioned this in the.
Did that just pop
text.
across?
I'm sorry?
Did that just pop across from Daz?
Oh,
Photoshop, or did you
no. When I created the render, which is when you saw the shadows and everything, that was just like an image file, and then I just imported that into Photoshop.
Right, got you.
Or just opened it in Photoshop. Just correcting the anatomy a little bit here. That's one thing that DAZ 3D models are not always great for, is that they don't bend properly at the joints and everything, because you are bending. They are just essentially bending a three-dimensional form without that much account for the fact that there's solid bone and then there's muscle and but that's where your actual drawing skills come in.
Yeah, you can see that witch's finger that you've gone for there. That's really
in print, some of these details hopefully won't stand out too much. But yeah, the face is the area where I wanted to concentrate most of the kind of adjustment, because it's a fairly characterless face as kind of at the default. So I wanted to try and add a little bit of kind of anatomical detail and stuff in there. Not too much so that it seemed overworked, but just enough that you get a sense that it's a real person and not a mannequin.
the Errol Flynn moustache. Is that
that's going to be
pretty standard?
Slightly altered. Yeah, that's just a result of the lighting sort of bouncing off the top of the lip, or not.
I think you should have kept that, man. I think that's
Well, they were very because so much of the anatomy is covered up. I wanted it to be kind of relatively clear that it was a female inmate, because so many of my tutorials so far are focused on white male protagonists and things. So I wanted to at least have some a female character in now and again. Before I changed before I applied the stamp filter, I upscale the DAZ render to 600 dpi instead of the default 72. Not in DAZ, once it's in Photoshop, just because you get a lot more detail out of your filters if you've got a higher resolution image, even if the actual image. A bigger sized image, even if the resolution isn't actually any higher, and it makes a remarkable difference. Like if I just converted that to black and white, or used the stamp filter from the size of image it would have been far more just indistinct and kind of messy looking. Whereas it's amazing the difference you get just by upscaling the image. So it's starting to look a little bit more like a person now. Just added a little bit of like cheekbone detail and sort of a wee bit of hatching to suggest some mid-tone. Using the pencil tool rather than the brush, so that it's pure black and white. There's no sort of slight greying off at the edges or anything. But I mean, I think we're getting close to being. Oh no, we're still. There's still a few more alterations to make, so there's still a wee bit of time left to go. So at this point, are there any more questions in your?
So well, yeah. I mean, like, when you're conceiving of a shot like this, when you're kind of like, you're putting it together in your head first before you do anything else. What are your kind of your reference points? I mean, where you're going to is, obviously, if you're talking from an art history perspective, you're maybe thinking like Caravaggio or somebody like that, those sort of light dark. But my feeling is that with this, you may be looking at a more of a kind of cinematic feel. So you may be thinking more like German expressionism or kind of like a film noir kind of feel? I mean, are those the kind of references that
Well,
you...
in classical terms, I would always go for Velázquez over Caravaggio.
Bold.
I know that's controversial. It's still a very sensitive issue, but I just I think that Velázquez's work was cleaner, more distinct. It had a greater clarity to it, and that showed a greater degree of confidence with his shadow work.
Sure. Velázquez never killed a guy over a game of tennis, though.
Yes, that's true. Caravaggio's life is a little bit more storied in terms of like taking on the best swordsman in the city and beating him.
Best in the lot.
Yeah, but in terms of cinematic reference, which is maybe more what I'm going for. Actually, I would say, in terms of composition, this is far more a comic book panel than it is. Like, I mean, with the way that the lighting's used.
Yeah.
If the lighting were that sort of dramatic would be the positive way of putting it. Contrived would be the less glowing. But if the lighting were that kind of set up and kind of purposeful looking in a visual on screen, it would come across as contrived, unless it was somebody like, you know, maybe Terry Gilliam or somebody who sort of, there's always that slight kind of unreal quality.
Yeah.
Anyway,
I suppose that's why I was thinking, like, you know, a more sort of expressionist kind of earlier kind of
yeah, like your kind of cabinet of Dr. Caligari,
exactly. Yeah, exactly.
And stuff like that.
Yeah, M and stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure people like Fritz Lang and everybody have influenced the language of comics and cinema. Well, they obviously have.
Yeah.
To a great degree, and so there will be a subconscious influence there, I'm sure.
But you're when you're looking at this, you're thinking of other comic artists.
Well, yeah, kind of. I think of like Alex Toth, who I don't know if you're familiar with.
No,
he's not somebody who kind of readers would necessarily know as much now. He's more of somebody who artists remember, even though his work is very, very readable. He's not, but he didn't. He did work on, like, he did a Batman story and stuff, but he's not known for a run on like classic DC characters or anything. His most well known run on a character was Zorro,
right?
Who maybe hasn't, you know, stood the test of time in quite the same way.
I hate that movie.
Oh, which one? The Banderas one. Oh, there's two Banderas ones. I never even saw the second one.
Oh, that grinds my gears.
Yes.
That's maybe another whole... Maybe we could get and do the director's commentary for the re-release of Zorro, and I can sit and moan about it the whole way through. That would be good.
I'm sure they'd be delighted.
Yeah, I reckon that's...
I'm sure they'd be delighted to have any way to sell that DVD.
Yeah, maybe that'd be the only chance.
I think the only place I've seen it in the last 15 years is in cash converters.
Yeah.
And usually about 3 copies.
Festering.
All of them a little bit burned.
Yeah.
So Alex Toth, like for particularly for compositions like this, where so much of the visual is just like a very simple block, black and white. Like he is famously quoted as saying, and I might have to paraphrase here because I don't have the quotation in front of me. But he said something very much like to the effect of, take all the non-essential information out of the picture and draw the hell out of whatever's left.
Right, okay.
And I totally agree with that, because the enemy of the comic book artist is non-essential information, like details.
Well, I mean, that's design as well, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
You know.
Yeah. He designed Space Ghost. He designed, the Hanna-Barbera character.
Space Ghost.
Yeah, you'd know him if you saw him. He's like...
Space Ghost.
Yeah, I know.
I'd like to see that.
Those two notions don't really have anything to do with each other, do they? Whether or not there's an afterlife doesn't seem to have any more bearing in space than on Earth. But he's a sort of superhero character. He's like white, he has like a kind of black... No, I mean, his costume is white.
Right, okay.
He has a like a cowl that's just kind of like a smooth. It's like Batman without the ears, and a white costume and like a black belt and a cape, a yellow cape. I'm sure you'll have seen it.
I think, yeah. This is ringing a bell.
Yeah, if
is he an actual ghost?
I'll be honest, I don't know. I have no idea. I don't think so.
Is he from space?
I think he.
What the hell is this?
I don't know. I think he does like have maybe some kind of satellite, because they did a Adult Swim series called Space Ghost Coast to Coast, where they reused a lot of the animation animation from it, and just did voiceover and everything, like basically every Adult Swim series around that time. And some of it was quite funny, but he's positioned in a sort of he's positioned in a kind of television studio in space and that, so I have no idea. I don't know.
But well, anyway, that's a good tidbit.
Yeah, I don't know if he's from space. I don't know if he's a ghost.
I feel like there's maybe a lawsuit brewing, some sort of trade descriptions issue.
Possibly.
So you were saying that get rid of
anything unnecessary. You don't. I mean, I touch on this in my ray gun tutorial or chrome effect tutorial. But yeah, you don't want any visual information really in there that you haven't put in there for a reason. And I mean, that may seem like an odd thing for somebody who's drawn so little of this image from scratch to say, but like everything that's there is there because I want it to be there. There's a little bit of texture in the walls, the exact amount of light and shadow and everything. It's all stuff that I planned in advance.
Yeah.
And if it doesn't look like I wanted it to in advance, then it's either better and I've gone, oh, that's a nice little thing, I'll keep that, or it's or I get rid of it. Because in illustration, in storytelling terms, clarity and obvious meaning of images is very important. To read well, it should be clear what you're supposed to be looking at, what the character's thinking. Maybe, I mean, in this case, it's a little enigmatic, as I said, but there shouldn't be anything in your image that kind of distracts the reader's eye unnecessarily. That you're not done intentionally.
I wonder if she's thinking this pillow smells like James Brown.
Possibly.
I think that's probably what it is.
She might be thinking, I'm really looking forward to this. This is going to be a great break.
Or just, I hope it's chips.
Yeah. What is I mean, you always hear terrible stories about prison food. What would you think would actually distinguish it from like school food?
Prison food's more expensive than school dinners. Kids get less spent on them than prison food.
You're starting to sound like the Daily Mail again.
I'm just saying. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. I think people should.
You think adults tend to eat more than children?
Yeah, and I think that's fine. But just in terms of like, is it, significantly worse than school dinners? Probably not. It might even be better.
Did you hear that?
Yeah, it was Snake. He got.
What?
It was my phone.
Oh right.
But it's what's that? The alert sound from Metal Gear Solid.
Oh, what, the Bram?
Yeah.
Was that what it was?
Yeah,
it didn't sound like that at all.
It was in my pocket.
Oh right, okay.
So maybe Snake's been discovered in my trouser pocket.
Yeah.
So school dinners.
Rephrase that. School dinners. Yeah, that's what we're talking about. Let's keep on point.
Yeah. Vital. That's what the people are tuning in for. They want to hear about that sort of stuff.
Okay. Anything else from your little notepad?
Colours.
Right.
So far, none.
Yes.
Right. But when you're putting this together, how much are you thinking about the work of the colourist that's going to
Well, in this specific instance, I knew this was going to be in black and white.
Right.
So it's very much designed to be that way.
So you can wallop on a lot more black.
Yeah, although even with stuff that's going to be coloured, using black like that, got quite a lot, it doesn't necessarily hurt the colours. In fact, it can sometimes enhance them.
Well, I've noticed this from your work previously, that like when you colour yourself, in terms of your drawing, then you get a really good effect. But I kind of had the feeling that sometimes that some people maybe have difficult. Well, maybe don't. I need to be careful, but you know, you the way you ink suits the way you colour, but it might not suit the way that everybody colours.
That's true. I think very much I ink with the or I colour with the view in mind that all the information in terms of what's dark and what's light has already been set out in the inks.
Yeah.
The colours typically should be pretty light. There certainly shouldn't be any black values in them, unless you're adding like a big area of just like a that's completely in shadow. You know, where you're basically sort of putting another little bit of inks in. But there shouldn't be any black value in the colours you're using. But I mean, if there's one thing I don't like very much, it's to see good sort of black and white artwork, then really kind of laboriously kind of mashed over by the colours, where the line work then just becomes part of a sort of weird painting where there's stuff that's completely in black outline.
Right, I see what you mean. Yeah.
But then the other stuff is sort of fully rendered in dark and it just like you got to bear in mind the medium in which you're working. You know, if it's line art which is coloured, then you have to respect the inker or whoever's decision-making process in terms of what's dark, what's dark and what's light. If it's stuff that's going to be fully rendered, you know, if it's pencils going straight to like kind of digitally painted visuals, that's fine. But the kind of halfway house where you're trying to make a full... I mean, if you're somebody like Dean White who does quite rendered colours, that's great. Like he knows how to use it really well so that the colours never overpower the inks. But sometimes colourists tend to kind of swamp the line work with colour detail. There usually shouldn't be that much detail in the colours, other than it's when it's clearly a space. Like if it's an empty sky, you know, then maybe you've got recourse to pop some cloud detail in or something if you want. But you know, I wouldn't say. But you know, don't be really adding loads of detail to faces and stuff. You know, respect the line artist's kind of right to actually delineate the stuff.
Yeah.
And I think it just tends to generally read better. So yeah, don't worry too much about trying to interpret like the shadows and everything if you're colouring quite kind of high contrast line art. Use lighter colours and just let the kind of already present chiaroscuro work for itself.
I had that in my notes.
Oh, you wrote chiaroscuro down.
Were
you playing a sort of a BS bingo on me?
Yeah, a little bit. Just take that off.
Well, you want to love the piece I presented out for the end. Oh, which I should probably read now. Doing this piece of, you know, a woman in prison and intense shadow work on it has inspired me to write a poem.
Oh, that's amazing, dude.
Yeah.
Do we have time though?
Yeah, no, I think so. I think we've got just enough time left on the commentary. I know you've got to head up.
I've got stuff. It's only 3 minutes. I wouldn't want you to have to rush.
It's all right. We can always do an edit.
Yeah, go for it.
So here it is. It's in free verse, as I think all the best poetry is. You know, art shouldn't have rules.
No.
So why learn any?
Well.
Right.
Oh my god.
It's called How Fall the Shadows.
What a great start.
Yeah. How fall the shadows in a cell of jail. And this isn't part of the poem.
Sorry, I think I breathed in some
I've spelt jail GAOL.
Yeah,
you know, the proper way.
With the poetic.
I wanted to have a timeless feel.
Yeah. I think Oscar Wilde did that.
Yeah. Sorry, I'll start again.
Yeah.
How fall the shadows in a cell of jail? Fall they softly, caressing wounded heads and broken men or women, if it's a woman's person.
Yeah. Cool.
Fall they lightly, imprinting not their forms on reckless souls? No. Prison shadows fall hard indeed, for prison is a very hard place in which to be, I assume. What did you think?
I'm going to just need a minute to process it.
Yeah, well, we only have... Oh, well, there you go. We've still got 2 minutes left. It only took a minute. That was so painful. We could have time for it again.
Do you know, because...
yes.
I'm really... The chain work here is
oh, yes.
really
I'm glad you pointed that out.
Yeah.
I wanted to... the chain work was all in shadow before, and I thought that sort of, I wanted to kind of break up that heavy shadow. It didn't sit right with me. It looked, compositionally it didn't work for me. So I wanted to have that little bit of highlight sticking out on the chain shadows, which isn't completely in line with how the shadows would have fallen in real life, because the render showed you more or less what that would have been like, but just works better for composition and for a nice visual and continuing the sort of striped shadow motif.
That's nice. Yeah.
It just makes everything that little bit clearer, makes the chain stand out a bit more. Like, makes it clear that it's not just a shadow itself of something else.
Yeah.
If it was all black, then it could just be another shadow.
Yeah. No, that was well worth doing.
Right, we've got to wrap up here.
Okay.
Sorry if you didn't get time for all your questions.
No, that's fine, and I've got a huge sort of emotive response to the poem as well.
Okay, well, yeah, that's fine.
I just don't think we're going to be able to fit it in.
Yeah, we've got to cut off now before Cammy starts sobbing. So this has been lots of fun to do. I hope you got something useful out of it, and let me know on Twitter or whatever. And that's it. So bye.